We are live. Well, this is Pitchdeck Asia. We're in the asiatechpodcast studio. My name's Graham Brown. I'm joined by Karl Vään. Karl, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's really, really good to be here.
It's great to have you here. Now, talk a little bit about your background before we talk about BitOfProperty.
Mm-hmm.
You're Estonian.
Yeah.
You live between two worlds, Estonia and Singapore. Your company's registered here in Singapore, right? But you live in Estonia.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about the story there. How did that happen?
All right. Well, it happened almost essentially a year and a half ago. Me and my co-founder Tavi, we packed our bags and came to Singapore on January 27th, 28th, something like that, in the end of January. And then we came with the idea. We already knew what we wanted to do. And then we came here to essentially start fundraising. The reason why we came to Singapore was actually there were like three things, I would say. One is that we actually saw a gap in what we do at the moment, right, in the real estate investment space. So that was the first one. We saw a huge potential here. Secondly, we had actually already people here. There are a couple of my best friends have already come here to start their own startups, and they've been actually quite successful here. And lastly, there was a friend who also has been in the venture capitalist area, and he has dealt a lot with startups. So he was helping us a lot and putting together with the investors. So that was essentially the three things why we came here. And then we started fundraising. We did it successfully and started a company here. We have a company also in Estonia. So this is like a HQ here. In Estonia, we have a subsidiary. And then we,
That's the story. So did you turn up in Singapore with a business? Had you started the business at that point? Was it just an idea?
This was actually essentially on an idea stage.
Right.
Yeah.
So you and Tavi, you said, let's do Singapore, backpacks, turn up.
Yes.
Let's raise some funds.
Yes.
Well, good for you. I mean, it's quite a brave move as well. Estonia is quite well known as a hotspot for startups as well, isn't it? I mean, that whole sort of area. I mean, you have a lot that's come out of the whole sort of Baltic area. Is that correct? What would you call it? So,
yeah, Baltic. Sometimes now Estonians like to call themselves like Nordics.
Nordics. Okay.
We want to feel a bit better about ourselves, but the Baltics, essentially the Baltics.
There's a lot of innovation that's come out of that area. I mean, if you've obviously got like Spotify and like Skype that have come out of Sweden, for example. Stockholm's obviously a powerhouse, and you've got like Tallinn, which is like well known for entrepreneurial talent. Why didn't you stay there? I mean, why did you sort of fly halfway across the world to do what you wanted to do?
I mean, as I said, one of the reasons was that raising. I mean, one of the things which I feel in Estonia, at least, and what I've heard as well, is that actually raising capital in Estonia for essentially, especially if you're like very on an idea stage, right? It's quite tough. The ecosystem is very good. I would say the startup ecosystem. We have a lot of successful startups there, but what it might be lacking is the capital. Right. So that was one of the things, and we would have easily. You can go to like Berlin or London, which is like way closer, right? But we didn't have contacts there, so I had like 3 or 4 friends already here, so living here almost like year or 2 years. So they have had already quite substantial contact base to go to. So we thought like, hey, first let's try that. And then if it doesn't work out, then we can also, go to near countries nearby, right? So
plan B.
That was the plan B.
But plan A worked.
Yeah, plan A
worked.
Well,
let's talk about plan A. Let's talk about BitOfProperty. We have your pitch deck here. So if you are listening to the audio podcast version of this, you can get the full video on pitchdeck.asia. For now, we'll talk through this and we'll have a look at the pitch deck. BitOfProperty. Now, obviously, with a name like that, Bitcoin is somewhere in there. I mean, obviously, blockchain is involved at some point, I imagine, with a name like that. We're going to delve into that in a minute. Talk about property itself. What was the problem that you're solving here? Why do we need this?
So there are essentially 3 challenges that we are seeing in the real estate investment space. One is that it has a high capital requirement, so to get in. So this is one of the things which might be keeping people away from investing into properties, or they're putting too much money into one property they cannot diversify, right? Secondly, is the time intensiveness. It goes first in the due diligence phase. So you have to know the market. You have to understand the property market, the investments, and the locations. And afterwards, once you have made the investment, then you also have to deal with the tenants, the management. So this also takes time actually to get some, cash flow from there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And lastly is the liquidity issue. So real estate has been relatively illiquid compared to other asset classes, right? So being able to sell your property easily and very quickly, it's, it takes time, right? On average, like 6 months when you can sell your property. So I think that's a quite a long time compared to other asset classes. So these are the three things we see that can be changed, actually.
Yeah. Okay. So quick look at the problems that exist in real estate, and the three sort of pain points that you've identified. High capital requirement, you've got to have the money in, obviously, like the deposit or the down payment. And illiquid, you can't just sell off a back bedroom, can you, of a house, which you could do if you had like other types of assets. And it's time intensive as well. I mean, you talk about 6 months, and the shortest you could probably sell a property was in 2 months possibly, but average probably about 5 to 6 months. Okay, so you've identified all these problems, and what are you going to do about it? Tell us what the solution to that is.
So what we have essentially built is a decentralized real estate marketplace for people to engage in real estate investments starting from small amounts and in an easier manner, so to say. So what people can do, they can browse the properties on the platform, choose whichever they like. They can then invest, essentially co-invest, meaning that they can put smaller amounts in the property, actually starting from 50 euros on our platform. And then they receive, because we are dealing with existing properties, we are looking only for properties which are tenanted and at the moment residential properties. So they receive monthly rental income to their wallet, which they can reinvest or withdraw to their personal bank account. And lastly, they can sell their shares essentially whenever they want. So at the moment, we don't have yet the full secondary marketplace ready where you can buy and sell your shares in the property. But this is at the moment already in development. But at the moment, people invest. They are usually investing about like 3 years. Their money is essentially locked.
I imagine if you're appealing to professional landlords or people who want to get into that space, is that in many cases they don't want to sell on their shares, and they only sell on their shares if there's a problem. They need liquidity, they need capital, or it's just a dog of a property. Most landlords, or people who want to create rental income, if the asset is good, will want to keep it forever. They don't want to sell out. So that's not an issue at this point, the fact that you don't have that secondary market, right? It's not that people are buying and flipping. Okay. All right, just so I understand. So if we go back to that model, if we can have a look at the pitch deck again. So let me understand, as a property investor, I'm looking at this, okay, that's interesting as a proposition, even though I'm in the market, and you're also appealing to a wider group of people who aren't in the market yet as well, right? Who owns the properties at this stage? The ones that are you acquiring them and then reselling them on to your customers, or do people group buy them? How does it work?
Yeah, I would say it's actually a group buying. So we don't acquire them beforehand. So what happens essentially is that the property owner or the developer, they wish to sell their, either apartment or some couple of units in their building. We go over their proposal and look at the properties from if the numbers make sense. So from the financial side. So then from the technical side, if the property is actually well maintained, so that it would actually generate good profit for the investors. And thirdly, from the legal aspects, so that everything would be safe and sound for the investor. So once these 3 boxes are essentially ticked, property will be put on the platform. It has some certain target which needs to be reached in terms of like money, and there is also a time period, like a campaign crowdfunding campaign period, essentially. So either it will be successful if either of those two will be, essentially,
the target's reached.
Target
right?
is reached.
Yeah.
Either
yeah.
target is reached, or the time expires,
Yeah.
and but maybe the target is reached very end of this
Okay.
stage, right? So it's either of those two. Yeah.
Why would I, as a property owner, want to list on this platform? Because I might say, well, I can just kind of sell it to the residential market with one buyer. I'm not dealing with 200 buyers. That's 200 heads with different opinions. Why would I want to go this way?
Okay. So there are actually I would say again like three things. First is that developers actually see this as a good way, a new way to sell their property, right? So they build, let's say 100 units, 50 will be bought by, individual buyers, and there is some leftover. So actually they see this as a good way to sell their property. Secondly, property owners, we have actually been contacted by the individual property owners who have the rental property, and they want to put the property on the platform, and they want to sell maybe 30 or 40%, keep the 50 or 60% themselves, divide the cash flow from there, and they see this as a good way to release the capital from from their asset, essentially. And lastly, as today we are an early stage startup, right? So we are just building up the platform, the user base, and everything. So, but if you look at the statistics, how the time it takes to fundraise for the campaign versus you go out and sell the property on your own on the regular listing site. So this is way much faster happens than if you would do it on the regular listing site, right? So that would be your essentially reason why would you actually sell the property on our platform.
Okay, so let's sort of put this back into context. I think it's important to understand that the properties are tenanted, right?
Correct.
So that's really important factor, isn't it? Because they're already producing income, and that income is locked in for however long that tenancy is, so they can understand what they're going to get a return on. And generally, tenanted properties don't sell very well in the residential market because most sort of walk-in buyers, when they want to buy their home, don't want to buy a home if granny's living in the home, right? Or there's a couple in there and so on. This is specifically for property investors. And generally, those markets, from my experience, don't exist in the residential space. Like, you'd have to talk to an agent who'd say, oh, by the way, I've got this property. He doesn't want to sell it in the high street window because it's got a tenant. It scares people off, but they have to do it on a very sort of like personal network basis, like an off the sort of like the main sort of advertising real estate. So that is, I guess, a problem if you're trying to sell a property in the market with a tenant, right? What you're saying is now people can go in and buy parts of that. So effectively a landlord can chunk off a percentage of that property deed to, a whole bunch of investors, right? Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
So I'm just trying to work this through myself. If I owned a property, I had it tenanted, it was producing an income for me. If that was producing positive cash flow for me, I might say, look, I could maybe free up a bit of capital without selling this thing and lose a bit of my cash flow. So I could actually make it balance a little bit, but now sell off a bit of the capital as well. That's an interesting proposition.
Yeah, it is actually.
I'm doing the selling for you here, but I'm a property investor myself, right? So the issue is it's binary. I have to sell the property or I keep it and get the income. If it is a good property producing a lot of income, if you've bought well and you've treated it well, then actually I could maybe reduce that property income a little bit and get some cash out of it.
Yeah. And, you can invest this cash either, buy another property or, however you want to, utilize this, right?
Yeah. Okay, good. The next part in this is the interesting aspect. We're going to bring in the technology because there are similar models that exist outside of the technical space. I mean, there's like Fund My Street and all these sort of crowdfunding real estate platforms out there, and they've been around for a few years. They exist. However, blockchain, discuss. Let's move on to this blockchain slide. If we can have a look at slide number 7, we'll jump forward. This is the bit where I need help understanding. So explain to me where blockchain comes in.
All right. So blockchain in our platform comes in when the investors make the investment. So whenever they click the button during the flow that I confirm my investment. So this is the part where the investment will be recorded on the blockchain. We're using public blockchain called Ethereum, and your investment is recorded there. And the property itself is also already tokenized whenever we put it on the platform. So what investors essentially can do is that they can view their investment in Etherscan. So how many investors are actually investing and how much people are investing, but they don't know them because they are essentially hashed, right? The people. So they're incognito, right? So, but you can, we want to be like as transparent as possible with the investment. So, and in the smart contract, what is written is at the moment it's in an early stage, I would say. So it's the amount you invested and the property code. But we are now building in there also the investment agreement so that it's actually a legally binding document, essentially, right? And the token which you receive, we just recently got it cleared with in Estonia with the notary office and the lawyers that this is actually, legal
binding
document, right? The token. Right. So this is the transparency and essentially the security. So we're bringing all the investments also away from our platform in case something should happen or anything. The investors still have the security and they can actually claim on this asset.
Right. Yeah. So this is the interesting part about what you're doing, because property is one of the oldest, legalized businesses in the world, in the sense you have like deeds and you have freeholds and leaseholds, and it's quite feudal.
Yeah.
It goes back to many, many hundreds of years old. And it's not been disrupted very much in the last 500 years, to be honest.
Yeah.
And then you're coming along, and I'm just wondered, because that part you're talking about making it legit, making it legal, is that if I owned a property, there is a loan on the property, which is the bank's loan, and they have a charge on the property, which basically means that if I default, the bank could repossess the property, right? How do you sort of, what sort of, I know you've mentioned, for example, like notarizing it and so on, speaking to notaries, is how do you sort of bring that into the context of making that legal? Because, what I'm trying to say is that if it all goes wrong, at the end of the day, somebody has to claim that asset back and own that house, right? And there may be, when you're dealing with hundreds of investors, how do you deal with that? How do you that must be a real headache, isn't it?
Actually, no, because the thing is that currently the two properties that we have done, they are full equity, no leverage. The third one at the moment ongoing, the same. We don't take leverage on that. This is full equity.
So there's no loans on the property?
No loans on the property, yeah. And eventually, when the property is sold or needs to be sold, right, and the cash needs to be distributed back to the investors, we have set up another security layer for that. It's called the security agent. This is a third-party law firm who comes with us to the notary office whenever we purchase a property, and with the investor money. So essentially what happens there is that he makes sure that everything is done by the book, and in case it needs to be liquidated, the property, then they are if everything goes well, property is just liquidated because of the investment term ended, right? And we're going to sell the property, distribute back the money. This we will do on our own.
Right.
In case something happens, then the security agent will come and actually deal with the liquidation and giving money back to the investors. So they have the transcripts of all the investors and who are in and how much they own, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. So you're still interfacing with the old world of legal documents.
Yes, a bit. Okay. Yeah, because
you have to.
Yeah,
it's still bricks and mortar.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it. So as I understand, going back to the example, if I was a property owner and I had equity in the business, in the property, and I had a charge on that property, and I wanted to free up some capital and sell it, I couldn't go through this platform because there's a charge. There's a mortgage or mortgager on that property who has a charge, and it wouldn't work in this setup. It has to be completely owned by myself.
That would complicate things at the moment in this case. However, we are already working on the next property after the depot house, which is live at the moment. So this one, it's the first one we're gonna do with the leverage, most likely. So let's see how that goes. Let's see how we can, structure it.
Yeah. Oh, well, best of luck with that. Let's have a look at that example that you bring up, the depot house. So if we can bring up the case study example here. If we just sort of flash forward to slide 13, I think is it this one here?
Yes.
All right. So tell us a little bit about this one. This is in Estonia.
Yes, this is in Estonia. It's in a city center, and it's like a new development at the moment, still in development. So in this case, for the depot house, is you can see that we're gonna acquire like 3 units from there. So in this case, which is very sort of like unique for this deal, I would say, is that the developer has guaranteed the 7% rental return for 2 years, even though the property is still in development. So they will finish it up early next year. So during that phase, even if the property is funded, successfully funded by the investors, they already start receiving the rental income. So this is very unique about it. And even if you look at the other properties that we have done, we sort of keep the same like the path. So essentially, we are looking at freshly built developments.
Yeah. So
because we believe that then there is less, issues with the technical side, the maintenance and everything, right? And
Okay, so this case is a development when you're buying 3 units from the developer.
Correct.
And I would have thought your model worked quite well, or had the most sort of value add to a developer, in the sense that developer needs liquidity fast, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's why they sort of sell off in tranches, don't they? In like, plan A, plan B, and so on. And you're able to generate that cash for them quickly, right? And that's what you seem to be doing here. You're buying into 3 units, and you're buying it, just so we can just go through the numbers here. These are on the video version if you want to have a look. In the pitch deck as well. If you want to go to Pitchdeck Asia and check out the pitch deck for BitOfProperty. Just walk us through some of the numbers. So you're buying 3 units. What's the price of the unit there? My eyesight's going. Is that 204,000 euros or?
Yes, this is like for 3 units.
That's right.
So, and this also includes the fees which come with acquiring the properity.
Right.
I mean, you
all
still
in
have to
204,000.
Yeah.
So all fees.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cheap. And what kind of rental would you get off those?
It is around 7%.
7% of
actually
204,000. So you're getting about 14,000. Is that correct?
Yeah.
A year. 7% net gross. So that's before tax, right? So 7%, 14,000. That's a good rental return for.
That's a good one
compared to Singapore, as an example, right?
Yes.
So Singapore, obviously, the property prices are well inflated. Okay, and what about with a development like this, are there like high maintenance fees to pay, or like common fees? Like usually communal charges are usually quite high on these developments in other countries.
No, actually, but I would say that in Estonia it's not. I mean, they're the new developments, the freshly built buildings. They are actually built in a very good, how do you call that? Like the energy grade, essentially. Yeah. And the tenant pays all the communal fees, anyways, right? So.
Okay. So they're not sold as like a leasehold? I don't know the system. And like in the UK, for example, they have this archaic system. Leaseholds and freeholds. And I don't know how it is in Estonia. You're probably a bit more advanced than the UK.
We don't have like different types of this leasehold and freehold. So
okay. All right. So in this case, 204,000, you go to your market, you go to your potential investors and you say, hey, look, this is the funding goal, 204,000.
Yeah.
And then anybody can come in. At what kind of level can they enter? You said 50 euros. So somebody could come in at 50 euros? Or?
Yeah. The first 2 were actually the minimum investment amount was 500 euros.
Right.
But for this property, we have decided to try and let's see how the market reacts when we put it like 50 euros, right? At the moment, now I think none of the investors have put like 50 euros in.
Right.
So, I mean, just this is to also let investors in who actually have very little like money or capital, but they really want to try out, right? So just to test the market essentially, or just to test the water, right? So
it's 500.
50. This one. For
they
50.
can come in at 50.
This one for 50. Yeah, depot house is 50.
Wow. So how many investors did you get on that one?
Which one?
The depot house.
It's still ongoing.
Oh, it's still ongoing.
It's still
How many
ongoing,
investors do you think you'll get?
I think around like 50 plus, definitely.
50 plus, so they're coming in about 4,000 average, right?
Something like that. 50 to 100, somewhere in between there.
Yeah, and the investors aren't known to each other?
How do you mean?
So you say you're putting it on the blockchain. So do I know who the investors are?
No, you don't, because this is the beauty of blockchain, is that you don't know the other person, but you see essentially it's called public address, right? So it's a hash. So it's just a sequence of numbers and letters, different ones. So you don't know. I mean, you can know. If I know your public address, then essentially I would know that it's you.
Right, okay. But only if I told you that address, that hashtag.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that in the sense that obviously one of the big concerns for government is fraud and laundering of money, right? How do you deal with that? Because I don't know if the money going into an investment like that is coming from dark markets. It could be from any kind of nefarious activities. How have you sort of dealt with that? Because that must be one of the big sort of question marks that government and regulators have raised about this kind of activity. So
very, I think, crucial point to note here is that we do not deal with crypto money, right? We are using blockchain as a technology, but we are not dealing with cryptocurrency, essentially, at least at this stage, not, right? So all the investors who invest must be KYC compliant. So they, provide all the documents and necessary information about themselves. We keep the documents for the anti-money laundering and other regulations, rules and regulations that we need to follow. And we do the background checks and make sure that everything is done by the book. So yeah.
Okay, so you have that KYC process in place, where you ID, etc., all those kind of things. Right?
Yeah, correct. And when they state their bank account there, the money has to be transferred from the bank account which they stated. Yeah.
Good. Excellent. Okay, well, just in rounding up, a couple of things I want to ask you. I noticed on your LinkedIn profile you said you're recruiting as well. I'll ask you about that in a minute, the kind of like team you are. Maybe we can start that. The first thing is about looking at your team itself, and who you are. If we can just flash forward to the end of your pitch deck. So you've mentioned Tavi, yourself, Karl as well. We have another co-founder, Timo.
Yeah.
All right, okay. Where did you guys meet?
Actually, I know Tavi for a long time. Tavi is actually husband of my sister.
Okay. All right.
So I know Tavi since I think 13 years or maybe a bit less. I don't know, something like that, right? And Timo, I've known I think 3-4 years. Timo is Tavi's course mate in university.
Okay.
Was. So yeah.
And you're all Estonian. You all live in Estonia.
We're all Estonians. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you think you will ever move out here to Singapore? Will that ever be an option?
Like actually living here? Yeah.
It's an option.
It's an option
to be discussed.
Yeah, to be discussed.
All right. Okay. Not committing now on air or anything like that. Okay. And you said you've raised money when you came to Singapore. Was that what was that, like a pre-seed, a friends and family round, or?
Yeah, this was a pre-seed round. We raised it from Singapore incubator called Space Ventures. So they were our first investors in the market.
Okay. And at the moment, are you raising?
At the moment, no.
No.
Yeah.
So you're good at the moment for now?
We're good. This was the first one, the pre-seed round. And after that, this year in May, we finished our seed round of investment with the 2 angel investors, one from Estonia, one from Finland. And the lead investor in this round was a Japanese company called Leaful. They are the biggest real estate listing site in Japan.
Yeah.
And now also, I think, the #1 real estate data aggregator in the world.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Do you think that will ever be a market that you move into?
Japan?
Yeah.
Definitely. We're actually going through the process, or actually the Leaful is going through the process of getting licensed for doing such activity in Japan. So we are looking ways to how we can, collaborate and bring the BitOfProperty also to more to Asia, maybe most likely starting from Japan. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, I like that because I have real estate investment interests in Japan as well, and it's a very interesting market in terms of rental yields, quite high.
Yeah.
And the good thing about this, the tenants seem to stick around for a long time. Like in Japan, people don't move around a lot.
Yeah.
When a tenant goes in, they live there for 10 years or 20 years, right?
Well,
so
that's good for the investors.
That's great. It's great for the investors, and they don't complain a lot either. You can go into a rental market where you have tenants who are high maintenance.
Yeah.
Like they need somebody to change a light bulb. You kind of want a tenant to do that themselves, right? But in Japan, they tend to not sort of talk to the landlords.
Yeah.
Which is great if you're a landlord as well. So, okay. So watch this space on Japan. And lastly, recruitment. So I know you said you were recruiting on your LinkedIn profile. I'm interested to know a little bit about why somebody should come and work for BitOfProperty. What is it about your culture, your team? Tell us a little bit about that, and also tell us about the kind of skills you're looking for, and importantly, where in the world, because we've got choices now that you're looking for people.
Yeah. So yeah, that's true. I mean, we are a tech company, so we already have two tech people like working for us, but obvious at the moment we already feel the need of having actually more of them. So we are looking for a full stack product engineer. So, and if talking about the location, we are actually at the moment headhunting, and we're doing it globally from, essentially everywhere. And we are looking for people to relocate to Estonia, because we believe that in a startup, in the early stage startup phase that we are at the moment, people should work together in one room, so that there wouldn't be any information asymmetry, so that there would be quick and easy communication. You can bounce the ideas, have ex-prompt meetings. So this is what we believe in. The structure of the team is essentially, or the culture that we also have, tried to, build out there, is that everybody they have to take ownership in what they do. So we are working, each has their specific tasks, so to say, and they have to take full responsibility and ownership in what they do. So in the future, you would, essentially visualize this as a different squads or teams, right? And they're autonomous, essentially, right? So they are each working for what they are, owning, right? And this is very, very important thing what we're looking for in the person that we're hiring, right? This is the most important, because at the moment, one of the things which we cannot allow, and I think startups shouldn't allow, is the management. So you shouldn't manage people, but people should actually take, initiative and ownership, in everything what they do.
Yeah, it's so true. So to recap, you're looking for a full stack engineer, somebody who ideally would relocate to Estonia to be with a team.
Correct.
And somebody who works quite well independently. Somebody who sort of can be part of the bigger team, but be autonomous.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
And do they have to be from a particular background? Do they have to have blockchain experience or real estate experience? Is there some sort of thing that you would like to see on their resume?
I mean, essentially, if they're like full stack, they need to know all the, the front end, back end, DevOps, all this. This is, and, understand the clean code. Secondly, they should be consumer focused, understanding the consumers, because taking over the product, essentially building the product, understanding why they're building different features here and there, right? This is, I think, it's crucial. And thirdly, the person should come from the startup background, either ex-founder or maybe having worked in a startup for some time, so they understand the dynamic of what they're getting into, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So they won't be
how important that is, right?
Yeah.
Great. So lastly, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you? Do you have a preferred channel or preferred medium that you like people to reach out to you on?
I think the best definitely is our website. Through the website, you can send us a message there. We have our email there. Also, my LinkedIn. I mean, feel free to shoot me an email. And
we'll put it in the show notes. So we'll put all your links there. Okay, excellent. Karl Vään, everybody. co-founder of BitOfProperty. Thanks so much for joining us today and sharing your journey with us. I'll be curious to see, from a personal interest purely, it's like how it goes with your projects. And, especially this depot house and, what the outshot of that is. And also, that bit where we talked about, you mentioned that there could be an option now to do this for properties where there were, loans on the property and, a landlord maybe wanted to free up some capital as well. I'm just really curious because that's a tough one to do. But if you can crack that, then good on you. I'd be interested to get you back on the show and share your lessons learned, right? Because it's never going to be straightforward, but it's going to be a journey. And hopefully you can come back on and share that with us.
Yes, definitely. Thank you for having me. It was really a pleasure to be here, actually. And to share the ideas and thoughts.
Thank you, Karl.
Thank you.